is Paola Viganò. I'm an architect and an urbanist, and I'm a professor in urbanism and urban design, and I teach in Venice, in EPFL, Lausanne, in different schools. We are in a special place. This is a cemetery. We are in Courtrai in Flanders, close to the French border, close to the city of Lille. And this is an urban site. Maybe the first impression when you see all this beautiful countryside, the waves, the hills, some green fields, one can imagine to be in a rural setting. But in fact, we are in the city. The contemporary city is made of places like this. We have a university just on this side. We have a sport complex just behind me, and a cemetery that is an important also urban infrastructure that is here. So this place for me is a way to describe also the change in the form, in the type of space that we call a city. Many years ago, together with Bernardo Secchi, we started to work in Flanders, in Courtrai, on another site. And then, at a certain moment, we had the opportunity to study, to design the new cemetery of the city. And the idea from the city side was to fill a little bit this area with a traditional cemetery. So we proposed to use the project, to use this transformation to organize a description of this territory. I remember Bernardo Secchi explaining to the citizen of Courtrai that Flanders was not a flat land, that Flanders was made of waves, and that the beauty of this landscape was exactly related to this movement and to the horizon that is always changing depending on your position. If you are lower, in the lowest part, as if we were like there, that we don't even see it, or if you are on the crest, as we are now in this moment. So the idea of proposing a project as a way to reveal a territory and a landscape. Well, this place changed me, I think, quite a lot. Of course, to reflect on a place for death is already something changing you. But the interpretation is we try to give is that there is really no distance between the two sides. And at the entrance of the cemetery that we conceived as a true public space, open, available also to other practices, not only the one of meditation, we can say, and mourning. At the entrance of the cemetery there is a sculpture that is a table with some dishes. And the idea is that a table is a place of meeting for us that are still alive and for those that are not anymore there. So it's really the idea of a place of where you can share with the rest something that is still your life. And I think that this was very much understood by the people in this moment, because it's there has been just a storm. But normally a lot of people is in the cemetery and use the cemetery as a public space. So people that come here during the day just to eat a sandwich, young couples come here to make love. It's not only a place for death. And I think this is something we really wanted to achieve. But the most important part of this story is the idea of using a project to describe a site. And we can say that we describe a slope, the form of the slope, and in three ways. So there is, first of all, there is a path, and the path is constructed on the existing slope. So we didn't modify it, we just followed the existing movement. Then there are the terraces. I think there are 12 terraces with a regular difference in level. So you can measure the difference you have from this high part and the low part just with this regular descending of the terraces. And then there was another one here that is close to an incision. There is an incision, what the British architecture would define a ha-ha, so this separation that is just an incision in the ground. And then there was a possibility to walk also on this sort of dune that is dividing the cultivated land, because this is sometimes still cultivated, and the cemetery without fences, without using other materials to divide it. So, and this element, this dune, is always changing its relation with the regular part of the terraces. And also the terraces are always in a different relation with we can say, the natural slope. And in these differences you can read this richness of the topography that is ever-changing during along the path. For us, this was a manifesto of a project as a description. So it's not the idea of a descriptive attitude in which you want to be mimetical, but it's on the contrary a very radical idea that by describing you can make something more evident, you can reveal something, and this becomes, you can say, shared by everyone because it's more clear, more evident. And I think that also what I understood from this site and this project is that design can be an instrument of knowledge production. The understanding of this site through the project has been a true moment of revelation for me. And I think after some years, I continuously reflected on this capacity of the design of space to add a knowledge about that space. I think that, in fact, the book I wrote many years later about design as knowledge producer was clearly related to this space and to this experience, because normally we don't valorize the capacity of design to be a descriptive tool. We think normally and very often to design as a problem-solving activity. And on the contrary, there is this capacity that is really through the instruments of design, through the imagination of a change that is, in fact, asking you to understand deeply the context in which your design is integrated. And you can develop a design explicitly as a tool of description. And this is, in a way to make a richer contribution to space, I think. This is a difficult question because the place has changed a little bit, or maybe a lot, after that project, and I still have to take the measure of all the changes. It is true that there are things that are not possible anymore. For example, from the crest road, the road on the crest, now it's more difficult to see the lower part of the valley, And this is, of course, a pity. Also, this path that was conceived as a path in continuation from the crest to the valley is now interrupted. So maybe this is a way to speak of the fragility of any idea, because this project is also an idea of space. Is also, I think, it was in that moment some years ago when the project was realized, an idea of public space in a condition of, in a kind of urbanity that is not the traditional urbanity of the city center, where you are used to the presence of public space. You have an idea that public space can be necessary. But here we are in a type of city in which public space is not so frequent. Yes, you have some specialized areas, for example, an area for sport. You have the park of the university, connected to the university, but an open space, just a space where you can spend some time, where there is not, the function is not the element that is leading your use, is quite rare in this type of diffuse, horizontal, I can say, settlement organization. So it was, for us it was important to maintain this continuity of space. The idea of a public space is also because you can enter, you can access in a very easy way. It's very well accessible, for example, from the main road. With the transformation of the last years, I have to say that this is a little bit more difficult. You have the impression that something has been interrupted. But there is always a capacity of space to regenerate itself, so I'm not too worried. I think that things will find a way to work. But I think that it's very important to continue to reflect on what is a public space in a condition of low density, scattered, sprawled. In Europe, we have a situation in which this diffuse city is something different from the American sprawl. So it's not the same type of space. And we have more stratified, we have more layers on which we can build it. But still is a challenge to understand what is the meaning of a public space inside a territory that is mainly inhabited by people in single-family houses with a garden, normally using a car and going maybe in other part of the city to spend their time, their free time. So what is a public space here? I think that the cemetery on one side is proposing an idea of public space because it's a space of everyone. It's something that belongs to every life. So I think that this idea of public is here very clear. But still you have to make it as a public space, something in which you can stay in a comfortable way, as a space that where you are not immediately led to one only way of using the space, in which a plurality of practices are still possible. So when we try to do a public space, we were counting on the fact that this was clearly public, yes, but still it had to be designed in a way that could be used as a public space, not just as a cemetery, as a functional element, but something more open. And in this sense, I think that the place is adapting itself to this. And I hope maintaining this possibility of being a public space and not just a functional infrastructure. I think maybe I will repeat what I was saying, but the true challenge we have, I think, today is really to understand that the city has become a sort of city territory. So it's a city that is inside the territory is the city, and this type of space for its position in this type of city is in fact an urban element, an important urban element. So I think that we understand better what is the contemporary city here than in the city center. We would have had the possibility to start from the city center of Courtrai, from the Grote Markt, the traditional European, we say Flemish city space, but I think that we understand much better what is the contemporary city by sitting here. Because this is the contemporary city, is a city in which agriculture, a piece of wood, the form of the territory, the lower part that is the wetlands that are just there, and some infrastructure that are typically also urban, are all together. So this type of space, for me, is really speaking of the city. This is the city of today. Here we are in the second place I've chosen to speak about space and to speak about the city and to speak about public space and the role of public space in the contemporary city. It's the park of Spoor Noord in Antwerp. It's a recent park that we have designed, Bernardo Secchi and myself and other people, some years ago, and the park has opened since 4 or 5 years, and it's a place that gave us a lot to think about the role of public space in the city. This space was it was an ancient railway platform. So a few years ago it was just a ballast surface, and there was the most important train station for the harbor of Antwerp that was still inside the city. Today the harbor is far away from the city, and then this surface was abandoned. And then there was a lot of discussion on how to transform this big space inside the city of Antwerp, in the very center of the city of Antwerp, in something new. So my work and the work we did was starting from this ballast surface and to reflect on how a new park, a new big important public space could play a role in the city. The first time I came here, it was in 2003, and it was difficult in that moment to imagine the transformation of this place. But what was important was that even if it was an abandoned site, a lot of people were starting to use it. So there were already practices in this place, and the city of Antwerp organized a competition, and this competition was very interesting because there was a preliminary work with the inhabitants of the area, and we observed what the inhabitants were asking for this site, and we were also observing the way in which they were designing sort of hieroglyphic on the surface, asking for a place where to move in different ways, where different types of movements could be possible. And we were very much inspired by this idea of flows inside this area, and we followed their indication. Of course, it was taking an image and transforming in a space. And that was the starting point of our work. That was always very much in contact with the different populations of the area. Although there was a problem, because we are here in one of the poorest parts of the city of Antwerp, And the immigrant population that is living, they are still living today here, which is very important. They were not participating to the debate, to the moment of discussions. They were clearly remaining outside of it. We were just meeting people, I mean the Flemish population, they were here, and with them we had a lot of discussions, while the Turkish population, the Moroccan population, they were not really participating. And that was one of the most important, I think, challenge of this project, how to imagine a space for all type of populations. And I think this is very important because in this part of the city, the contemporary city is made of different type of spaces. And here we are in a very specific type of space. We are inside the compact city. Inside the compact city, a lot of transformations have completely modified the structure of the city. Industrial areas, infrastructural surfaces, they are changing. A lot of buildings here, they are exactly, we saw them there, for example, we see them here. They were all related to a different past. And the problem is to reintegrate them in a new cycle. You can say in a new life cycle. Something that is asking for a lot of imagination. And the fact that the poorer part of the city is here is because this was an industrial part. Here were the workers of the harbor living. So it's a working neighborhood, and how a big public space could transform this neighborhood, but try to avoid the complete gentrification of the site. Try to avoid, for example, the risk of a park just for certain part of the population, and how to open a new life cycle in which this place is not a periphery anymore, but is one of the centrality of the city. So this type of strong modifications, I think this is really a metamorphosis of space. It's something that the city centers are every day asking for this kind of new interpretations. So first of all, I would say that the problem of a concluded life cycle, space concludes a cycle, and you have to reopen it, and you have to reintegrate practices, and your material is the space itself, is through the design of space that you try to reinterpret this area. I think that this space was an important moment of reflection on some concepts that are probably quite interesting for imagining a project for the city today. The concept of porosity was very important here. Here we see exactly what the geologists would call a porosity of fracture. At a certain moment inside the city, big fractures open. They are related to technological shifts or changes in the way of living, of inhabiting. The city of Antwerp is an example of the white population flee out of the city. They abandoned more or less the city center during the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and they prefer to live outside in the diffuse horizontal metropolis in which they have built their single-family house with garden. This was a strong policy of the Belgian government to support the ownership of the house and also this kind of suburban type of lifestyle. And when we arrived here, only immigrants were living, in fact, in this part of the city. So the city was extremely porous in the sense that a lot of spaces were simply abandoned. Some of them, as the Park of Sport Nord, because of this transformation of the harbor and then the abandon of the platform, and in other cases because the original population was not there anymore. And the porosity is an opportunity, of course, because you have the impression that space is again a malleable entity. It's not rigid. You can imagine something different using the porosity, using the fact that there is a certain tolerance in space. There is more space than what is needed, what is used. And the porosity of fracture, the fracture that is opening, this porosity, but also the porosity of the materials. For example, all the buildings here they were used for different purposes, and they are now used as a cafe or as a sports center, which is the case there. So I think that the question of porosity became a quite fundamental way to look at the city, the built environment, the material environment, but also the social environment, the lifestyles. How do you live in a very porous city? You live in a different way from a city that is completely filled up. No? Porosity gives you more imagination, gives you the possibility to change your practices, to invent, to introduce modifications. So I think that this aspect of porosity was making of Antwerp a very innovative city, a city where some people coming back to live in the city center could really transform their life space, the space in which they were living. And in this sense, I think that porosity can be a very crucial and very interesting quality of space. Of course, porosity can be also very negative when in fact is blurring very much the relations among the different parts. And sometimes porosity is simply hiding some qualities. But we were, in a way, trying to use porosity as a positive element and constructing for the different types of porosity of this site and also of the neighborhoods around, different types of projects. For example, just close to here, just there is a small space that is a slope of a tunnel covering the high-speed train that is passing there and is coming out in the middle of a square. So that type of fracture asks for a very simple project, but still asks for a project, because this type of interruption, the TGV passing there, was asking for a redesign of a small public space. And I think what we understood that porosity is interscalar, is crossing scales. You have porosity of different grains, and the city is very interesting when you have different kind of porosities, and you can work on it at different scales. We were also in the conditions working on this space to think at the space of the city altogether. We were reflecting also on the structural plan of the city of Antwerp, in which these different grains of porosity were coming up, were showing up, and for us they were a way to interpret the city and to propose different strategies for this porosity. The concept of porosity was very important also in other contexts, and that's why I think the fact that we went deeper here makes this space very special for me. If we take the concept of porosity, for sure, when we worked on Paris, on Greater Paris, it was quite shocking for us. On one side, a very permeable, porous city, Antwerp, and on the other side, a city with a lot of rigidity, a lot of barriers, a lot of fractures that were not yet porous. And this lack of porosity in the case of Paris were, in our opinion, was asking for a project of porosity. Here we were really profiting of porosity. In Paris, the problem was to insert porosity, to use all possible devices to integrate porous spaces inside the city. So I think that for some reasons, although even in Paris we have a lot of abandoned areas or not so well used or not so much used surfaces, still space is much more organized, is much more impermeable to imagination, I would say, to the possibility for inhabitants, for people living, to appropriate of those space. And this is in fact a big difference because this space was appropriated even before the project, even before the transformation. It was already used by people. Well, I have not really changed my opinion about this place. On the contrary, I think that for me it's very important the role of space and especially of public space in the city. And I think that this was not so evident for at the beginning when we were working. When we participated to this competition, we were convinced that a city needs public space in a certain even quantity. It's not just a problem of having some public space, but to have also big public space. The size, the scale of this public space is important. But this was not the position of all the, for example, all the designers that were participating. The idea that the city of today still need big public spaces is something that is not shared by everyone. For example, someone might say that the city would need a smaller proximity space, spaces for the neighborhood, spaces for... No, we think, and I think I'm very much convinced of this, that the city needs different types of public spaces, and also the big scale of the public space is important. Is also a place of representation of the city, of citizenship, I would say. So the scale is important, and for us, it was very also coherent not to fragment this dimension. I want to speak a moment of the scale of this park. It's almost 2 kilometers long. It's not very large because it was a railway yard, so it is mainly a linear strip, but it's almost 2 kilometers. And to have inside the city, the compact city, such unity makes of this park also a recognizable figure. This park is also a figure in the city, and is a figure that can also be prolonged. And I hope that in the future, other projects will prolong this figure that is connecting the river with the open spaces outside the denser part of the city. So I don't think I've changed my position in respect to this. On the contrary, I think I have reinforced the conviction that we still need public space, and we still need big public spaces. The big scale is also a way to integrate different practices. A big public space is flexible, and we have tried to make it very, very flexible. I mean, the design of this park is very simple. I even say almost basic. Everything is basic here. The materials, the type of furniture. I mean, it's really, our idea was to have a very simple space that could be used in many different ways. So we tried not to over-design space. Space is light design. And one consequence of this light design has been also the cost of the park. So the park was in fact less expensive than what we thought. And because it was less expensive, the municipality could immediately requalify and reopen the big buildings. And that was very important because, for example, this building has a very interesting story. The initial idea was to demolish the building because there were no functional programs. The city had nothing to put inside. So for them, it was very clear that without a program, you don't need space. So that was for me a very important lesson. We need space even when we have no programs. So I'm completely on the opposite idea of others that think that first of all you need a program, and starting from the program you will have a space. I think that we need spaces, and then we will find programs. And this means that the interesting reflection that was connected to maintaining this building was that a city needs redundancy. You need a certain, as I said, porosity is also redundancy. You need tolerance, no? In a special, from a special point of view, which is also a tolerance from other point of view. But immediately, this place, because there were no programs, new programs arrived, and no one had the idea that, for example, so many people could use this as a true centrality, a true urban centrality, even metropolitan centrality. And then practically it was much more than what we thought and what everybody was expecting from this place. And this maybe leads me to another important part of the reflection on space, that is we are too much used to the idea of associating certain types of space to certain types of cities or certain type of neighborhoods. We are too much used to the idea that because when we have a neighborhood, we need a proximity space, a space at the scale of the neighborhood that is in fact giving an answer to the basic needs of public space, of services, etc. Well, I'm completely against this idea. I think that in the contemporary city, this kind of cell concept is completely dead and is even not, I mean, it's really not open, it's a closed idea. We need in such space, for example, that is in the poorest part of the city, we need a truly metropolitan space, a space that is able to attract people from outside the neighborhood. And because of this is constructing conditions of exchange that are otherwise very, very, very difficult. If we continue with the idea that each community has its own space, we will have gated spaces, no? Spaces that are limited and limited exchange. And if we continue to support the idea that neighbors need just their own basic space, again, I think we are supporting the idea of separated spaces. On the contrary, and we call this the relation villages and metropolis, many big cities are made of villages, not only London, that was described by Rasmussen as being unique, a unique city because this big metropolis was made of villages, but every city is made of villages, and every metropolis is made of villages. But also every village is belonging to the metropolis. And sometimes big public spaces or big service, big infrastructures, they are close to the villages or they are touching the villages or they are even inside the villages. So the small villages inside this area, each own neighborhood with its own population, they participate also of the metropolitan space. And this park is used by people coming, for example, the weekend from outside the city of Antwerp, just because they like the space. Or people coming here for big parties, or for weddings, or for important moments of their life. And also the everyday life, people really living just around it that are coming inside. And so refusing the idea of a park for the neighborhood, but supporting the idea that this had to be both the park for the neighborhood, but also a park for the metropolitan area. I think we understood something important, and reflecting then on the city of Antwerp, we tried to maintain this idea that scales are much more integrated than what we think, because the way in which we use, in which we practice space, is completely transversal, crossing all different types of limits and also of scales. In terms of designing this village metropolis space, I think that you have to consider some elements. And for example, the way in which we designed the border of the park, it was like a long threshold. Now, in each point you had to, for example, this is an enlargement of the park at the level of the houses. The houses are higher because there is a viaduct there. So the houses follow the slope. And so we decided to bring a part of the park at the same level of the houses in a way that they can really get out and immediately are inside the park. Or there, for example, we put a series of small entrances to the park that are already places where you can sit, where you can meet, where you have the small playground for the children. So even the immediate proximity, the entrance of the park is already a place where you can stay, where you can immediately feel as being inside the park, but also very close to your house. Is really the threshold between the house and the rest of the park. So by designing really the border of the park, this long linear space, we tried to give immediately a relation with the houses around, but also an invitation to come into the park. Knowing that, for example, elderly people, maybe they don't like to come until this point, but they just stay on the benches, the long benches that are close to their house. So using really the different scales to connect the metropolitan space with the very local space just in face of your house. Space matters for many reasons, I would say. First of all, space for me is, I follow Desserteau about space. Space is a place, but it's a place with practices inside. Space is both. Is a physical. I mean, you can measure it. You can take you can measure in a precise way physically the space. But at the same time, there is something you cannot measure, and this is the practice. This is the way in which different people appropriate of this space. So, in this sense, of course, space matters because it's the place and the practice of the place. So it's something that is at the core of all our interest for space and for the city. Secondly, I think that the space matters because through space we can understand how the city is produced. So the production of space is also fundamental, also to reflect on the way in which, for example, such a big public space has been finally produced. It has been really an intention, a very strong motivation from the side of of the city of Antwerp to requalify this very degraded part of the city, starting with this big park. It could have been a failure. Imagine processes of degradation. It could have been very easily a completely lost opportunity. And I think that there was a lot of fear at the beginning that maybe the population around the park would have not liked to come into the park, or on the opposite, that this park could become just a neighborhood park and not the metropolitan park that also was one of the ambition of the city. So I think that space matters because we read through space everything about society, about I mean the engagement also of a city in transforming itself. And I think that space also matters because it's a truly political act. So we are here because we are citizens, we are here because it's a public space, so I think it's a true political act, this park.